On the evening of the 3rd of May 2007, in the small Portuguese resort town of Praia da Luz, her name was Madeleine Beth McCann. Her parents were having dinner about 80 meters away with 7 friends. At about 10 in the evening, her mother walked back to check on her. The bedroom door was open wider than she had left it. The shutter was raised. The bed was empty. 19 years later, no one knows what happened to her. In June of 2020, the German federal prosecutor in Braunschweig named a suspect, a German national convicted of unrelated sex offenses who had lived in Praia da Luz at the time. His name was Christian Bernhard Brueckner. The lead prosecutor has said publicly more than once that he is certain Brueckner killed her. In 5.5 years, no charge has been filed. On the 17th of September 2025, Brueckner finished an unrelated sentence, and Operation Grange, the Metropolitan Police investigation in London, is still open. The case has not been solved. The institution that believes it knows what happened has not been able to prove it. This channel is called the Quiet Hill. This is the case of the vanished of Praia da Luz. Chapter 1, Praia da Luz. Praia da Luz is a small beach town on the Algarve coast of southern Portugal, about 10 kilometers west of the town of Lagos. A long sand beach, a quiet promenade, a few low blocks of holiday apartments built into the slope above the water. The Ocean Club is one of those blocks. A holiday resort opened in the 1980s, popular with British families. Apartment 5 is set on the ground floor of one of the resort blocks. 2 bedrooms, a sliding glass patio door at the back, opening onto the poolside, onto the street. In the smaller children's bedroom, a single bed beside the door, 2 travel cots along the back wall, a single exterior shutter that lifted from the inside. Gary McCann was a cardiologist. Kate McCann was a general practitioner. 3 children, Madeleine, nearly 4, who would turn 4 on the 12th of May, and the 2-year-old twins, Sean and Emily. They had arrived in Praia da Luz on the 28th of April 27, one-week holiday due to end on the 5th of May. They were traveling with friends, group later called with the British press the Tapas 9, Jerry and Kate McCann, David and Fiona Payne, Russell O'Brien, Jane Tanner. Each evening they ate dinner at the small tapas restaurant inside the resort, perhaps 55 to 80 meters from apartment 5A. Each set of parents would walk back to their unit at intervals through the evening to check on their sleeping children. Thursday, the 3rd of May, was the 5th night of that arrangement. The wooden front door was on the latch. The unlock. Chapter 2, the dinner autota. The Tapas 9 sat down to eat at 8:30 in the evening. At about 9:05, Jerry McCann walked back to apartment 5A. He entered through the unlocked patio door at the back. The bedroom door was ajar. The three children were asleep. Madeleine in her single bed, Sean and Emily their cots. He watched them for a moment, then walked back to the restaurant. At about 9:30, Matthew Oldfield walked back to check on his own children in another apartment. He looked in on the McCann children at the same time. He later told investigators he had seen the twins and their cots. He had not fully inspected Madeleine. At about 10 in the evening, Kate McCann walked back. The bedroom door was wider open than she had left it. The metal shutter on the exterior window was raised. The window was open. Madeleine's bed was empty. She ran back to the restaurant, shouting that Madeleine had been taken. The tapas group ran back to the apartment. The search began in the resort grounds within minutes. By 11, the Guardia Nacional Republicana had arrived. The Policia Judiciaria of the Algarve Regional Command followed later that. By morning, the case was national news in Portugal. By the second day, international. Two early eyewitness reports emerged that would shape the next 2 decades of the investigation. Jane Tanner, walking back to the restaurant shortly after 9:15, said she had seen a man near the junction outside the McCann block walking away with a child wrapped in a blanket. At about 10, a Northern Irish couple staying further inside the resort, Martin and Mary Smith, said they had seen a man carrying a blonde barefoot girl in a pale pajama. Chapter 3. The first 72 hours. The Policia Judiciaria of the Algarve Regional Commands opened the inquiry that night. The lead inspector was Goncalo Amaral. The chain of custody at apartment 5A in the first hours was the British and German investigators who reviewed the file years later would say irrecoverable. Friends and resort staff walked through the apartment. Witnesses were interviewed informally. The patio door was handled, the shutter. By the time the scene was formally secured, much of the forensic value had already been compromised. Outside the resort, the search expanded across the night. By morning, several hundred local residents were searching the beaches, the cliffs, the scrubland. Photographs of Madeleine were circulated through the Spanish frontier and to the international airport. By the third day, she had become the most photographed missing child in the history of the European press. The first named person of interest was Robert Murat, British-Portuguese property consultant who lived with his mother across the road from the Ocean Club. He had volunteered as a translator in the first days. On the 14th of May, the Policia Judiciaria formally made him an arguido. Arguido is a Portuguese procedural designation, named person under formal investigation, with the right to be told what one is suspected of and the right to remain silent. Chapter 4. The Arguidos. In late July of 2007, a British police dog unit was brought to Praia da Luz. 2 dogs, Eddie, a cadaver dog trained to alert on the odor of human death. Hila, a blood detection dog. Eddie alerted inside apartment. IV, he alerted on clothing belonging to Kate McCann. He alerted on Urbano Cynic. The family had hired after the disappearance. Hila alerted on the same locations. On the 7th of September 27, the Policia Judiciaria formally made the 8 Kate and Gary McCann Arguidos died. 2 days later, after a long evening of interviews, they flew back to the United Kingdom with the twins. The dog evidence was contested almost immediately. Cadaver dog alerts are now specific to time, to identity, and in some cases to the species of the source odor. The alerts were not corroborated by laboratory analysis. The Portuguese court later ruled the dog evidence inadmissible. In October of 2007, Amaral was removed from the case after publicly criticizing the British investigators. In July of 2008, the Portuguese Attorney General closed the investigation, citing inadequate evidence to bring any charges against anyone. The Arguido status of Kate and Jerry McCann and of Robert Murat was formally lifted. None of them were ever charged. Murat went on to win substantial libel settlements against British newspapers. He remained in Portugal. The PJ closed the case, having developed no other coherent suspect, having mishandled the early evidence preservation, and having produced no body and the charge. Chapter 5, Operation Grange. Between mid-2008 and mid-2011, the case existed mostly in the press. The McCann family raised about £1.85 million through Madeleine's fund. And in May of 2011, under pressure from a long-running campaign in the British press, the Prime Minister authorized the Metropolitan Police to undertake formal. The review was given the name Operation Grange. By 2013, it had become Volksverbesserung with 29. Its working hypothesis was that Madeleine had been taken in a burglary that escalated when she woke up. Operation Grange identified the Smith sighting as the strongest single eyewitness lead. It worked through the resident foreign population of the Algarve, in particular drifters and unrecorded workers. The process took years. It produced no public breakthrough. In parallel, the case became, to put it bluntly, an industry. Books were written from every angle. Documentaries were commissioned by Channel 4, by Netflix, by ITV, by RTP. Sightings of Madeleine were reported from around the world for years and worked through one by one. Scam artists demanded ransoms. The McCann family continued through it all. They sued newspapers that published libelous theories. They sued Concala Moral. They consistently maintained that their daughter might still be alive somewhere. By the financial year ending in 2024, the cumulative public expense of Operation Grange alone had reached about £13.2 million. The most expensive single missing person investigation in British police history. Chapter 6, Christian Brueckner, On the 3rd of June 2020, the German Federal Criminal Police Office issued a public appeal joined by the Metropolitan Police and the Polizia Judiciaria. The lead prosecutor was Hans Christian Wolters of the Generalstaatsanwaltschaft Braunschweig, the senior public prosecutor's office for law. Wolters said the investigation was treating Madeleine McCann as the victim of a homicide. The German authorities had identified a specific suspect, a German national then aged 43, then serving an unrelated prison sentence in Germany, a convicted sex offender. He had lived in Algarve on and off during the years around the disappearance. German investigators had telecoms data placing his mobile phone in Praia da Luz close to the time. His name was Christian Bernhard Brueckner. Born on the 7th of December 1976, adopted as an infant, grew up in the Hanover region of Lower Saxony. By his mid-teens, he had the juvenile record for burglary. By his late teens, he had convictions for the sexual abuse of children. He moved to the Algarve as a young man. He lived intermittently in the Lagos area between roughly 1995 and 2007. During the relevant period, he lived in a rented, yellow-painted farmhouse outside the village of Farral, about an hour's drive from Praia da Luz there. He supported himself in significant part through the burglary of holiday villas along the coast. In 2005, 2 years before the McCann disappearance, Brueckner broke into a villa in Praia da Luz and raped a 72-year-old American woman. He was not arrested for that crime at that time. In 2016, after he had become a person of interest to German investigators, reviewing his background in Algarve, German police searched his property on the grounds of a former employer in Saxony. They recovered video footage that he had filmed of the 25 rape. He was tried in Germany in the Landgericht Braunschweig. In December of 2019, he was convicted and sentenced to 7 years. Chapter 7, the threshold. To understand why no charge has been filed in 5.5 years, it is necessary to understand what the German Criminal Procedure Code requires before. Under Section 170 of the Strafprozessordnung, the German Code of Criminal Procedure, the end of an investigation must decide between two outcomes. Either file an indictment with the competent criminal court or terminate the investigation on the grounds that no sufficient suspicion of an offense exists. The standard for the first option, codified across German case law for over centuries in reichender Tatverdacht: sufficient suspicion of the offense. Sufficient suspicion exists when, on the basis of the assembled investigative file, conviction at trial is more probable than acquittal. The prosecutor must look at imagine the case before a trial court and estimate that the probability of conviction is greater than 50%. Wolters has said more than once that he is 100% sure Brueckner killed Madeleine. His personal certainty is not a relevant institutional measure. What the institution must ask is a panel of the judges at the Landgericht Braunschweig looking at the file. Brueckner had been on trial at the same court for 5 separate sexual offenses alleged to have been committed in Portugal between 2017. 3 counts of aggravated rape, 2 of sexual abuse of children. On the 8th of October 2024, he was acquitted of all 5 counts. The presiding judge cited insufficient evidence. He observed that prejudgment of the case in the media appeared to have shaped both public perception and witness testimony. The acquittal was on a separate file, the same defendant, the same prosecution office, the same court. He placed on the public record as a court ruling the proposition that the prosecution's evidence on adjacent allegations was insufficient to convict. Any prosecutor evaluating the McCann file in late 2024 and 2025 had that result to factor into the forecast. Chapter 8, the 17th of September, Brueckner's 2019 sentence ran for 7 years. It ended on the 17th of September, 2025. On that morning, he walked out Sandy Correctional Facility near Hanover. He was required to wear an electronic ankle tag to surrender his passport, to report his residence to a probation officer, to comply with monitoring for 5 years. Recent weeks, ATV News had tried to approach him. He knocked over a reporter's microphone and said nothing. He had not been charged with anything to do with Madeleine McCann. The Generalstaatsanwaltschaft Braunschweig has not closed the file. Walters has continued to make public statements about his certainty of Brueckner's guilt, qualifying it as his personal investigative belief, not a statement of legal certainty or the purpose of indictment. By March of 2026, after a thwarted attempt to settle into a private flat in Braunschweig, Brueckner had, in the words of the German press, fallen off the radar. His current public whereabouts are not known. The Metropolitan Police, in spring of 2026, signaled it was weighing extradition option. The same problem would apply. The underlying file does not yet support a prosecution that meets the threshold of either jurisdiction. Chapter 9. The case is still open. The Operation Grange on the latest Home Office disbursement will continue at reduced staffing into the 2026 to 27 financial year. The Polícia Judiciária file in Portugal remains technically open. So does the Braunschweig file in Germany. 3 jurisdictions, all formally active, no body, no charge, no. A recovered body would change the calculus. The arrayed reservoir search of 2023 did not produce remains. Other searches have not produced remains. Other searches have not produced remains. A second cooperating witness with no credibility problems comparable to the existing one would change the calculus. No such witness has emerged in 5.5 years. A confession would change the calculus. The defense's strategic posture is silence. In the absence of any of those three changes, investigation continues, evidence accumulates incrementally. The institutional threshold is not crossed, no charge is filed. On the 18th anniversary of her disappearance in May of 2025, the McCanns wrote that the search goes on. They have continued to say there is nothing to say, there is nothing. Coda, the procedural mystery. Madeleine Beth McCann was born on the 12th of May 2003 in Leicester. She would, if alive, turn 23 in May of 26. Kate and Jerry McCann are in their 50s. Their two younger children, Sean and Amelie, are adults. The fine Christian Brueckner is 49 years old. He is a free man somewhere in Germany or potentially elsewhere in Europe, wearing an ankle tag, reporting to a probation officer. The case has now occupied 2 decades of police time across 3 national jurisdictions. It has named a suspect the lead prosecutor publicly believes is guilty of murder. It has produced no criminal charge for the disappearance. The mechanism is not corruption, not failure of effort, not lack of resources. It is the institutional threshold of Hinreichen der Tatverdacht doing what it is designed to do. What the system has done is honor the principle that nobody is charged unless conviction is more likely than not. What the system has not done is produce accountability for whatever happened in apartment 5A on the evening of the 3rd of May 2007. 19 years after a small girl disappeared from a Portuguese beach town, the question has still not been answered. This channel is called the Quiet Hill. We come back to the questions that the institutions could not answer. Subscribe, and the next one will find you